Operation Barbarossa, the biggest, most disastrous military gamble in human history. Let's get right into it.
Picture this, June 22, 1941. An absolutely unfathomable 3.8 million Axis troops surge forward. We're talking nearly 150 divisions, 3,000 tanks, and 2,500 aircraft, all pouring across a front that stretched a massive 1,800 miles. It's the largest invasion force ever assembled.
Now, you've got Axis forces bringing incredible speed and superior tactics, but they made a fatal error. They completely underestimated Stalin's reserves. German intelligence figured they'd face around 200 Soviet divisions total. But by August, the Soviets had somehow conjured up over 200 fresh divisions. The Germans were winning battle after battle, only to find a massive new army waiting for them over the next hill.
So, the motivation and the plan. Why even risk a massive two-front war when the fight in the West was still raging?
Basically, it boiled down to resources and ideology. Germany wanted living space, Lebensraum, and the complete eradication of Bolshevism. The grand plan was to conquer everything west of this massive boundary known as the AE line in just 2 to 3 months. They were desperate to seize Ukraine's agriculture and the Caucasus oil before winter even had a chance to start.
And here's a quote that perfectly captures the pure arrogance of the Axis leadership at the time. They literally believed the Soviet Union would just fold instantly. Completely blinded by their easy wins in Western Europe, they entirely wrote off Soviet industrial power.
Moving into the early German victories. And, for a brief, terrifying moment, it really looked like they were right.
That initial blitzkrieg was absolutely devastating. The Red Army was caught completely off guard because Stalin stubbornly ignored warnings, terrified that mobilizing his troops would provoke an attack. Because of this hesitation, German panzers raced hundreds of miles inland. By mid-July, they were sitting a mere 200 miles from Moscow.
By the end of September, their encirclement tactics trapped mind-boggling numbers of Soviet troops. We're talking 520,000 men captured behind Kyiv alone. And these gigantic encirclements were actually made worse by Stalin's absolute refusal to let his armies retreat and regroup. He just ordered them to stand and fight, which basically allowed the German pincers to swallow entire armies whole.
But then came the mud, the winter, and the fierce resistance. The deeper the invaders went, the more their quote-unquote invincible war machine began to crack.
The logistics just became an absolute human nightmare. As the Red Army retreated, they used scorched earth tactics, burning crops, blowing up bridges, even packing up entire factories and shipping them east. Plus, captured railways were totally useless and Soviet tracks were a different size. Then the autumn rains hit, turning dirt roads into this thick, clogging mud that trapped absolutely everything. By the time sub-zero winter temperatures hit, freezing German soldiers were stuck without winter coats and their tanks literally froze in the ice. Which brings us to the turning point. This logistical nightmare set the perfect stage for a massive, war-altering counteroffensive.
Look at how this timeline builds. In October, the Germans make one desperate last push toward Moscow. But by November, extreme frostbite is sweeping through their ill-equipped ranks, driving Axis casualties up to 730,000. Come early December, some detachments reach Moscow's suburbs. They could literally see the city, but they're completely stalled in the forests, frozen and exhausted. Then on December 6, Soviet General Zhukov unleashes a crushing counterattack, using fresh, heavily equipped Siberian divisions specifically trained for the extreme cold.
So what's the big takeaway here? By the end of 1941, the failure of Operation Barbarossa dragged Nazi Germany into a brutal war of attrition that would ultimately secure its defeat. Over 8 million total casualties were inflicted across both sides by December. That quick, decisive victory the German high command banked on, a total illusion. The Red Army absorbed the absolute strongest blows the Wehrmacht could throw and bogged them down in an unwinnable nightmare.
This single epic miscalculation completely rewired the modern world's geopolitical landscape, setting the stage for the Cold War and dividing Europe for decades. It is the ultimate historical what-if. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think our world would look like today if this massive gamble had actually succeeded? Thanks for watching this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.